The Galactic Council laughed when they allowed primitive humans to join the invasion of Plaxia Prime. They expected the weak new species to die first and prove how inferior they were. But when the casualty reports came in, humans had 97.3% elimination rate with almost no human losses. Now the galaxy isn't laughing anymore. They just realized they didn't recruit soldiers, they created something far more dangerous. Before we dive deeper into the story, please subscribe. It costs you nothing but helps stellar HFY allot. The Galactic Council chamber hung suspended in the void above Elisara Station, a vast crystalline sphere pulsing with holographic banners from 1,000 species. Ground assault is authorized, Zotrar rumbled, his voice thick and wet, echoing through the chamber like distant thunder. We strike at dawn cycle. The psychic Lyak will shatter their wills. The insectoid Krieg will tear out their throats. The rest of you will pay the butcher's bill for galactic order. A low murmur rippled through the chamber, a mix of anticipation and dread. Then the human ambassador, Rebecca Kane, rose. She was small, unarmored, carrying the faint scent of recycled coffee and stubborn resolve that seemed out of place among the towering aliens. Humanity requests permission to participate, she said calmly, her voice steady despite the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. Volunteers only. We have marksmen prepared for ground operations. Silence fractured like glass. Zotrar's mandibles clicked in open amusement, the sound sharp and mocking. Marksmen? You primitives still rely on chemical projectiles and die from minor wounds. This is no training drill, Ambassador. Plaxia Prime will devour your kind. We allow you a seat at this table out of pity, not respect. Kane's expression remained granite, unflinching. We understand the risks, President Zotrar. We ask only for one squad integrated into each mixed company. Let the casualty reports speak when the dust settles. Cruel laughter erupted from the Krieg delegates and the crystalline Vayari. Most species joined in, the sound rolling through the chamber like a wave of contempt. Only the Lyak representative, a tall violet-skinned empath named Hidib, stayed silent. His subtle psionic aura brushed Kane's mind once and found unyielding steel wrapped in quiet fury. Interesting, he thought, a flicker of curiosity stirring in his ancient eyes. Zotrar waved a dismissive claw, his multiple eyes narrowing. Very well. Let the primitives watch true warriors at work. Perhaps they will learn humility before they are erased. Motion carried. In the observation gallery overlooking the chamber, Captain Elena Voss of the Terran Volunteer Force clenched her fists until her nails bit into her palms, drawing tiny beads of blood. At 32 she already carried scars from 3 brutal wars Earth had fought alone before the Council noticed humanity existed. Beside her, Sergeant Jax Harlan, a towering, quiet Appalachian with cold, calculating eyes, methodically cleaned his rail-assisted M88 rifle. The weapon looked crude next to elegant plasmacasters, yet its smart rounds could deliver death with surgical precision at extreme range, threading needles through chaos. You heard them, Voss whispered, voice tight with suppressed rage that burned like fire in her chest. They've already written our obituary. Harlan chambered around with a soft, deliberate click that echoed like a promise. Let them write it. Obituaries are just first drafts, Captain. Hours later, the assault fleet translated into Plaxia Prime's gravity well with a bone-rattling jolt. Dropships plunged through atmosphere turned into fire by flak bursts that lit the sky like apocalyptic fireworks. Voss's mix squad, Hidib's Lyak fire team, a 6-limbed Krieg recon specialist named Skrith, and 6 human volunteers, rode in the shuddering belly of Drop 47. The hull rattled as if giant fists pounded it, shaking teeth and testing nerves. Hidib's calm voice slid into every mind through the neural link, smooth as silk. Remain connected. I will taste their fear before their eyes find us. Skritha's mandibles chittered with anticipation, the sound like dry leaves in wind. Their patrols follow fractal patterns. I can read the gaps. But the humans will only slow us down. Harlan never looked up from his scope, his focus absolute. Watch me. The ramp dropped into red dust and choking ozone that burned the lungs. Black iron spires of Plaxian defenses rose like teeth against a bruised sky. 10,000 elite guards waited somewhere ahead, their presence a heavy shadow over the battlefield. Zotrar's voice crackled over command channels from orbit, dripping with condescension. "Begin the assault. And try not to embarrass the council, humans." Voss racked her rifle, jaw set like iron. "Copy that, Mr. President. We'll try real hard not to disappoint." The first Plaxian sentry died without finishing its challenge. Harlan's suppressed rifle coughed once, a whisper of death. The alien's head snapped back in a spray of violet blood. Hittib's eyes widened a fraction. He had felt the sentry's mind extinguish instantly, without panic or scream, a clean cut. "How?" The Lyac sent privately to Harlan, genuine surprise threading through the link. The human's reply was flat and calm in the squad link. "Distance is our friend. Yours is the mind. Mine is the trigger. Let's see if they play well together." Skritha's antennae twitched in what might have been respect. The wind howled across the red plains, carrying the scent of blood and scorched earth. In the distance, the real slaughter was only beginning, a storm gathering on the horizon. The galaxy had written off humans as primitive and weak. The casualty reports had not yet been written. Night cycle on Plaxia Prime felt alive, black, freezing, and hungry, as if the planet itself wanted them dead. Voss's mixed squad hugged a jagged ridgeline while Skrith vanished into the shadows ahead like living smoke, his form blending perfectly with the terrain. The insectoid Krieg returned exactly 3 minutes later, dark ichor dripping from his harvesting claws, the smell metallic and sharp. "Forward outpost. 30 guards. Heavy weapons emplacements. They expect the main push from the south." Hittib knelt in the dust, long violet fingers pressed to the ground. His psionic field expanded like ink spreading through water, invisible tendrils probing enemy minds. "I taste only arrogance. They believe the invasion is already broken." Voss checked her chrono, heart hammering against her ribs like a war drum. "We have 6 minutes before the main Lyac assault draws their attention. Hittib, you soften their minds. Skrith, you mark targets. Harlan, you kill. Everyone else provides covering fire and prays we don't die screaming." Corporal Reyes, one of the younger humans, muttered under his breath, fear and defiance mixing in his voice. "Pray to what? The council already decided we're disposable bait." Harlan's voice cut through the link like ice, steady and reassuring in its coldness. "Pray to ballistics, kid. It's never let me down yet." They moved like ghosts through the darkness, every step calculated. Hittib went first, invisible to Plaxian senses. His gift was not brute domination but delicate suggestion, a whisper that made an enemy's eye drift left when it should have looked right, that convinced a trigger finger to hesitate for half a heartbeat. He hated using it on allies. Tonight he wielded it against the enemy with surgical contempt, each mental nudge a scalpel. At 200 meters, Harlan went prone behind a shattered boulder, his body merging with the ground. His rifle's smart scope painted the outpost in ghostly green overlays. 30 targets. 30 heartbeats pulsing in his reticle. Hittib's voice whispered inside their skulls, urgent and precise. "Now!" The Plaxian sergeant turned to bark an order and never finished. Harlan's subsonic round took him through the throat in a mist of blood. Before the body hit the dirt, 3 more guards died, clean, silent, impossible at that range through swirling dust and wind shear. The aliens froze, instinct screaming ambush while their minds failed to locate the source of death. Skrith darted between them like a blade made of night, claws flashing. A guard spun toward movement only to have Hittib plant a suggestion: "The real threat is behind you." The Plaxian turned straight into Skritha's venomous claws, dying with a gurgle. Voss's fire team opened up with short, disciplined bursts, drawing the rest of the outpost into chaos. Plaxian return fire chewed the ridgeline into flying shrapnel that whistled past ears. A jagged shard sliced open Reyes's cheek. He didn't scream. He simply kept shooting, blood streaming down his face like war paint. Hittib felt the enemy's panic spike and fed it, twisted it, made their commander believe reinforcements had already breached the wire. The Plaxians broke formation exactly as Harlan needed. 6 more precise shots rang out, each one a perfect kill. 6 more corpses joined the dust. In 90 seconds the outpost fell silent except for the howling wind and the slow drip of violet blood pooling in the red sand. Skrith cleaned his claws with deliberate care, the motion almost ritualistic. Elimination efficiency 94%, no serious friendly wounds. Humans. You are not supposed to be this precise. Harlan stood, slinging his rifle across his back with practiced ease. We've spent 10,000 years killing each other. You spent it singing hymns and playing politics. Different practice. Hittib studied the human sergeant, probing gently. Harlan's mind was a fortress, cold, focused, almost elegant in its simplicity. No wasteful psionic leakage. Only pure, unyielding intent. From orbit, Zotrar's staff officer delivered the first casualty update in a trembling voice. Lyak losses negligible. Krig reconnaissance flawless. Human casualties 0. Minimal ammunition used. Zotrar's booming laughter filled the command deck, dismissive and loud. Luck. Or they hid behind real warriors. Mark it as a statistical anomaly and move on. But in a quiet corner of the command bunker, a junior Cephaly analyst stared at the drone footage with wide eyes. 30 dead Plaxians. 6 humans and 2 specialists. The numbers refused to make sense. He said nothing. Not yet. But doubt had taken root. The squad pressed forward into deeper darkness, tension coiling tighter. Ahead lay the Iron Ridge, where the Plaxian 7th Legion waited with anti-orbital cannons and gene-forged berserkers. Hittib tasted their bloodlust like a rising red tide, thick and suffocating. He glanced at Harlan, exhaustion already creeping in. You will need more than rifles soon, human. Harlan chambered another round with a soft click. Then give me more than fear to work with, psychic. The wind carried the distant thunder of 10,000 marching feet, a sound that promised annihilation. The galaxy had written off humans. The casualty reports were still coming. The Iron Ridge earned its name through blood and fire. Plaxian artillery walked across the sky in relentless sheets of plasma and shrapnel, turning the landscape into a hellscape. Voss's squad was pinned inside a crater that had once been a hill. Dust and ionized air choked their filters, making every breath a struggle. Corporal Reyes was down, shrapnel buried deep in his thigh, but still conscious and cursing steadily in 2 languages, his pain fueling his determination. Hittib's psionic shield flickered under the strain, violet energy crackling faintly. He could blunt the raw terror flooding the squad, but he could not stop physics. A shell detonated 30 meters away and the blast wave slammed into them like the fist of an angry god, throwing bodies and debris. Skritha's voice crackled over comms, strained but steady. Main defensive line is 200 meters ahead. They have a central command node. If we take it, the entire ridge collapses. Voss wiped blood from her eyes, voice raw with exhaustion and fury. We're not crossing 200 meters without air support, and the Council is hoarding the bombers for the civilized species. Harlan crawled to the crater's lip, scope raised, eyes narrowed against the chaos. Through smoke and muzzle flashes he counted interlocking heavy weapons emplacements, overlapping fields of fire, and one massive Plaxian war priest screaming blessings into a voxhorn, his voice a rallying cry. Hittib crawled beside him, violet light dancing faintly under his skin as he concentrated. I can reach the priest. I will make him order a full ceasefire for 3 seconds. You must be perfect, Harlan. Harlan's jaw tightened, sweat beading on his brow. 3 seconds is generous. Make it 4. The Lyak closed his eyes. His aura flared brightly for a moment. Across the killing field, divine certainty suddenly flooded the war priest's mind. The enemy is broken. Hold all fire and witness their surrender. Plaxian guns stuttered into uncertain silence, a fragile pause in the storm. Harlan exhaled slowly, letting the universe narrow to a single glowing reticle. 4 shots rang out in rapid succession. 4 crew-served weapons went dark, gunners dead before they understood the command had been suicide. The priest's holy certainty shattered into confusion and panic. The ridge erupted again, but the deadly rhythm was broken. Voss screamed, "Move!" and the squad sprinted through hell itself, legs pumping, hearts pounding. They lost Corporal Mendez to a plasma bolt that flash vitrified her torso in an instant. She died without a sound, her body crumbling. Harlan felt that shot like a personal failure, a stab to the gut. He answered with 3 of his own, each round punching through armor plating that should have been impenetrable, vengeance in every trigger pull. Inside the command node, the Plaxians fought like cornered predators, desperate and vicious. Skrith became a whirlwind of blades and venom, dancing through the enemy with lethal grace. Hidib turned their own rage inward, soldiers suddenly shot comrades they knew were traitors, minds twisted by subtle suggestions. Voss and her remaining humans fought with knives and rifle butts when magazines ran dry, close-quarters brutality at its finest. Harlan took a round to the chest plate. The armor cracked but held, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He kept firing without pause, pain ignored. When the last Plaxian defender fell in a heap, the node belonged to them. Skrith planted the breach charge on the main console with steady claws. Hidib collapsed against a wall, violet blood trickling from his nose, his breathing ragged. Voss keyed the squad channel, voice hoarse from shouting. Iron Ridge command node secure. Pushing to Phase 2. From orbit, Zotrar's staff watched the casualty feed update in real time, numbers flashing red. Human losses in the sector, 2. Plaxian losses, 412. The ratio was grotesque, defying all projections. Zotrar slammed a tentacle against the console in raw fury. This is impossible. Recalibrate the sensors immediately. The junior Cephaly analyst finally spoke, voice trembling with a mix of fear and awe. Sensors are accurate, President. The humans are not leading the assault. They are multiplying its effectiveness. The Lyak creates the moment. The humans finish it with impossible precision. The Krieg finds the path. Together they are something the Plaxians have no counter for. Zotrar wanted to have the analyst executed on the spot, his rage barely contained. On the ground, the final push loomed large and terrifying. The Plaxian overlord's palace rose in the distance, bristling with defense grids that hummed with power. Hidib's mind was fraying at the edges, too many deaths, too much feedback pouring in. He could taste the overlord's towering rage like acid on the tongue, burning and corrosive. He looked at Harlan, exhaustion heavy in his violet eyes. One last time. I will make every guard on the palace ramp look left. You will have 6 seconds. Harlan did not reply with words. He simply rose, rifle raised, and walked into the open like a Mun stepping onto a familiar range, calm in the face of death. 6 seconds became legend, spoken of in hushed tones for cycles to come. When the ramp finally fell silent, the Overlord himself emerged, towering and clad in living obsidian armor. He raised a weapon capable of glassing an entire city block in one devastating blast. Hidib had nothing left. He collapsed, vision blurring. The Overlord aimed directly at the fallen Lyak, hatred burning bright in his eyes. Harlan's rifle spoke one final time. The round tore through the Overlord's visor, through the brain, and out the back in a spray of royal violet blood. Plaxia Prime's central command died with its ruler in that single perfect shot. A heavy silence rolled across the battlefield like a physical wave, the calm after the storm. Skrith landed beside Voss, antennae drooping with exhaustion and awe. The war is over. Voss looked at Harlan, who was already clearing his rifle with shaking hands. Not the war, she said quietly. Just this battle. The galaxy had written off humans. The casualty reports were still coming. Dawn on Plaxia Prime brought no mercy, only more death and chaos. The Plaxian counterassault crashed against the ridge like a hammer forged from pure hatred, wave after wave of fanatical troops. Voss's mixed squad had become the unwilling tip of the spear, whether the council approved or not. Hidib's psionic reach stretched to its breaking point, violet energy flickering weakly, yet every time exhaustion threatened to drop him, Harlan's calm voice cut through the neural link. One more. Give me one more opening. They had turned the captured command node into a makeshift fortress of corpses and overturned hover tanks, barricades hastily thrown together. Skritha's tiny reconnaissance drones fed them perfect, silent targeting data from above. The insectoid moved like living lightning along the ridgeline, painting targets no one else could see through the thick smoke. Hidib stood exposed in the open, his violet aura blazing defiantly, daring the enemy to focus on him. Plaxian snipers tried to end him. Their shots bent, slowed, and turned aside by raw willpower and psionic deflection. While every enemy I locked onto the psychic, Harlan and the 3 surviving human marksmen worked from the shadows with cold, methodical precision. The synergy was becoming terrifying, a force that defied logic. A massive Plaxian heavy walker lumbered into view, its cannons tracking Hidib with lethal intent. The Lyak whispered into the pilot's mind with his last reserves, "The controls are reversed. Push forward to stop." The walker lurched straight into Harlan's kill zone. One rail-assisted slug the size of a beer can punch through the cockpit at Mach 8. The machine died mid-stride, collapsing and crushing 20 of its own infantry beneath its bulk in a cacophony of metal and screams. Skritha's hiss of laughter crackled over comms, dark and satisfied. "Beautiful." Voss moved everywhere at once, coordinating fire, dragging wounded back to cover, feeding fresh magazines with blood-slick hands. She had stopped pretending this was anyone else's war. This was theirs now. The Council feed in orbit updated relentlessly, numbers climbing in ways that shocked analysts. Sector 7K, once projected to cost 3,000 Allied lives, had now fallen with only 47 total casualties. 29 were Plaxian. The rest were split between Lyak, Krieg, and humans, an impossible ratio. Zotrar's tentacles slammed the console in fury, his voice a roar. "This cannot be happening. Recalculate the projections." The junior Cephaly analyst spoke again, voice steadier now with growing conviction. "Projections were based on outdated assumptions, President. The humans are not replacing our strengths. They are amplifying them. The Lyak creates the moment. The humans end it with surgical precision. The numbers do not lie." Zotrar wanted the analyst silenced permanently, his fear turning to cold calculation. On the ground, the final push toward the Overlord's palace began in earnest. The massive structure loomed ahead, bristling with overlapping defense grids and elite guard formations that seemed endless. Hidib's mind was fraying badly now, too many deaths feeding back into him, too much raw emotion. He could taste the Overlord's personal rage like boiling acid, corrosive and overwhelming. One last time, he sent to the squad, exhaustion bleeding into the link. "I will make every guard on the main ramp look left for 6 full seconds. Harlan, you must be flawless." Harlan did not waste words. He simply stood, rifle up, and walked forward into the open ground as if stepping onto a quiet firing range back home, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. Those 6 seconds became legend in the days that followed, retold in barracks and council halls alike. When the ramp finally fell silent, the Plaxian overlord himself stepped out, towering and clad in living obsidian armor that pulsed with dark energy. He raised a weapon that could glass an entire city block in a single shot, power humming. Hidib had nothing left to give. He collapsed to his knees, vision swimming. The overlord aimed directly at the fallen Lyak, hatred burning in his eyes like twin suns. Harlan's rifle spoke one final, perfect time. The round tore through the overlord's reinforced visor, through the brain, and exploded out the back in a spray of royal violet blood. Plaxia Prime's central command structure died with its ruler in that instant. A heavy, unnatural silence rolled across the battlefield like a physical wave, the fighting dying down as realization spread. Skrith dropped from the ridgeline beside Voss, his antennae drooping with exhaustion and something close to awe. "The war is over." Voss stared at Harlan, who was already clearing his rifle with hands that had begun to shake from adrenaline crash. "Not the war," she said quietly. "Just this battle. The real fight starts when the reports reach orbit." From high above, Zotrar watched the casualty feed freeze on the final numbers for the sector. Human losses remained shockingly low. The efficiency rating for the human marksmen in the mixed squads had climbed to levels that made veteran strategists physically ill. The president of the Galactic Council sat in heavy silence, 6 eyes narrowed in growing dread. For the first time, the Predator felt the cold gaze of something far more dangerous staring back from the void. The galaxy had written off humans as primitive and useless. The casualty reports were still coming, and they were about to rewrite everything the Council thought it knew. The casualty reports reached the Galactic Council before the victory cheers even began, hitting like a shockwave. President Zotrar stared at the final tally projected in blood-red holograms across the Grand Chamber. Allied dead, 1,847. Plaxian dead, 41,392. Human dead, 11. Human wounded, 19. The elimination efficiency rating for the human volunteer marksman sat locked at 97.3%, a number so absurd it made the Veyari mathematicians physically ill, their crystalline forms shimmering with disbelief. The chamber was deathly silent. Only the soft hum of the station systems could be heard, underscoring the tension. Ambassador Rebecca Kane stood once more, small and unbowed amid the towering alien delegates. The human volunteers performed adequately, President Zotrar. We await your formal commendations. Zotrar's voice emerged as a razor-edged hiss, barely containing his fury. Adequately? You turned a projected meat grinder into a surgical strike. Explain this. Kane's smile was thin and sharp, laced with quiet triumph. We read the terrain you provided. We used the tools you mocked. And we stood beside allies who were never allowed to become more than the sum of their parts before today. Hidib appeared via hollow from the surface, still bandaged and pale but eyes bright. His violet eyes met Zotrar's without flinching. They did not carry us, President. They completed us. I have touched thousands of minds in battle across my life. None created such clean, perfect synergy. Humanity does not replace our strengths. It weaponizes them. Skritha's image flickered beside the Lyak, mandibles clicking in agreement. The galaxy wrote the script for this war. The humans rewrote the ending in blood and precision. Zotrar's tentacles coiled tightly in barely suppressed rage. In the encrypted subchannel reserved only for Council elders, he issued a single, ice-cold order: classify all human performance data at the highest level. Mark the species as strategic unknown, potential existential risk. Public narrative remains unchanged. Council foresight enabled this historic triumph. Aloud, he boomed with forced benevolence that rang hollow. The Galactic Council accepts full credit for this masterful integration of forces. Humanity has proven itself useful. Medals will be distributed. Parades will be scheduled in your honor. Kane's eyes remained cold steel. She had already received the leaked subchannel data from the terrified Cephaly analyst who had risked everything to send it. She knew exactly what they were truly saying behind their smiles, fear masked as control. On Plaxia Prime, Captain Elena Voss stood on the balcony of the conquered Overlord's palace as the first Council dropships began their descent through the smoke-filled sky. Sergeant Jax Harlan leaned against the railing beside her, his rifle slung, face streaked with dirt and dried violet blood, the weight of the battle still heavy. They're scared, Harlan said quietly, eyes scanning the descending ships with sharp awareness. Voss nodded slowly, a grim smile touching her lips. They should be. We just showed the entire galaxy that even the best version of them still needs us to become truly terrifying. Hidib limped up behind them, supported by Skrith. The Lyak's voice was soft but heavy with meaning. They will watch you now. Closely. Dangerously. You have become something they did not plan for. Harlan chambered an empty round with a soft, deliberate click that sounded like a quiet promise of future conflicts. Let them watch. We've been the underdog before. We're very good at the comeback. The sky above the palace filled with celebratory fireworks and massive council banners proclaiming victory. Beneath the glittering display, something far colder settled over the fleet: quiet calculations, contingency plans, and the first seeds of genuine fear spreading like a virus. The casualty reports had done their damage. The galaxy could no longer pretend humanity was primitive and weak. It could only pretend it wasn't afraid of what humans truly represented, a force multiplier that turned allies into something unstoppable. In the observation lounge high above the surface, the mixed squad gathered later that evening, exhausted but alive. Voss, Harlan, Hidib, and Skrith shared a bottle of contraband earth whiskey smuggled down from the human transports. Hidib took a cautious sip and coughed, violet fluid staining his lips, the burn surprising him. Harlan allowed himself a rare, tired grin. Told you it had bite. Skritha's antennae twitched with dark amusement. The Council is already drafting containment protocols. I intercepted 3 encrypted packets before we left the ridge. They fear what we 4 became together far more than they ever feared the Plaxians. Hitib stared into his glass, eyes distant with reflection. They should fear it. I have touched 1,000 battlefields. None felt as complete as this. You do not need psionics. You choose precision the way we breathe. It is terrifying. It is magnificent. Voss raised her glass, voice steady despite the fatigue. To the Casualty reports. May they keep the bastards honest for once. They drank in silence as the fireworks continued to bloom outside like false stars, a celebration built on lies. Far above in the Council's most secure server vault, a new classified file bloomed in the darkness. Humanity, Threat Assessment, Alpha. It contained every second of drone footage, every ballistic trajectory, every whispered psionic suggestion paired with perfect human shots. The file was already marked for immediate escalation to the war mind, a shadow looming over future decisions. Zotrar stood alone before the glowing data, 6 eyes heavy with the weight of what he had just witnessed. For the first time in his long, arrogant life, the Predator felt the unmistakable chill of becoming prey, the balance of power shifting in ways he could not control. The galaxy had written off humans. The Casualty reports had written them back in, larger, sharper, and impossible to erase. The victory parade on Elisara Station was a masterpiece of carefully crafted propaganda designed to soothe egos. Massive holographic banners floated through the Grand Hall proclaiming Council wisdom triumphs again. President Zotrar hovered above the crowd on a gleaming grav throne, his tentacles raised in a gesture of benevolent triumph that felt forced. Beside him, the human volunteers stood in crisp dress uniforms, medals pinned to their chests by alien hands that trembled with barely concealed unease. Captain Elena Voss accepted her ribbon with a single, respectful nod that could have been gratitude or a silent warning to those watching. Sergeant Jax Harlan's medal hung slightly crooked on his chest. He made no move to straighten it, a subtle act of defiance. Hitib and Skrith stood with them as equals now, whether the Council liked it or not, their presence a living reminder. In the private antechamber immediately after the ceremony, Zotrar cornered Ambassador Rebecca Kane, his voice low and venomous, tentacles twitching. "You will withdraw your volunteers immediately," he hissed. "We cannot allow these force multipliers to roam freely across the galaxy. Not after what we have seen on Plaxia Prime." Kane's voice never rose above a calm, measured tone, her resolve steel. "You asked for help, President Zotrar. We delivered victory at a cost you could never have paid alone. The Casualty reports are now public. Every species in the Council has studied them. You cannot unread 97.3% elimination efficiency." Zotrar's 6 eyes narrowed to dangerous slits, anger boiling. "We can control the narrative. We always have." "Until now," Kane replied evenly, meeting his gaze. "Humans do not break when you rewrite the story. We simply write a better one." Later that cycle, in the dim observation lounge overlooking the assembled fleet, Voss, Harlan, Hitib, and Skrith gathered quietly, the weight of the day settling. They passed a bottle of contraband earth whiskey between them. The Lyak took another cautious sip and winced, violet fluid staining his lips. Harlan offered a tired smile, the lines of battle still etched on his face. "Told you it had bite." Skritha's antennae twitched with dark humor. The Council is already drafting containment protocols in the background. I intercepted 4 new encrypted packets while we were on the parade deck. They fear what the 4 of us became together far more than they ever feared the Plaxians. Hitib stared into his glass, his voice soft but heavy with warning. "They should be afraid. I have touched countless minds across countless battlefields. None were as complete or as terrifying as yours. You do not need psionics or exotic abilities. You choose precision the way the rest of us breathe. It changes everything." Voss raised her glass, her expression calm but resolute, eyes hard. "To the Casualty reports. May they continue to keep the bastards honest." They drank in heavy silence while fireworks continued to bloom outside the viewing ports like beautiful lies, masking the tension beneath. Far above them, in the Council's most secure black server vault, the file labeled Humanity, Threat Assessment, Alpha continued to grow with every passing moment. Every second of drone footage from Plaxia Prime, every ballistic trajectory, every perfectly timed psionic suggestion paired with devastating human marksmanship was stored there in meticulous detail. The file had already been flagged for immediate escalation to the War Mind and Select Elder Species, a ticking bomb in the heart of the Council. Zotrar stood alone before the glowing data core, his tentacles coiled tightly in unease. For the first time in his long and arrogant life, the apex predator of the Galactic Council felt the unmistakable chill of becoming the prey, the hunter now hunted. On the parade deck below, Harlan felt the invisible gaze from orbit like a rifle scope pressed between his shoulder blades, a constant pressure. He looked up slowly, staring straight into the hidden cameras he knew were watching every move, and allowed himself a small, calm smile, the smile of a man who had already won the only war that truly mattered, the war for respect. The galaxy had written off humans as primitive, weak, and irrelevant. The casualty reports had written them back into the story, larger, sharper, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined possible. And somewhere in the cold darkness between the stars, the real story was only just beginning, a new chapter in galactic power where humanity would no longer be dismissed.